Hello, hello. My name is Clark Heron, aka the Harry Hoba, and welcome to episode 7 of AKA Sports. And as always, in case you haven't heard of us, or maybe you're watching for the first time, you can simply go to youtube.com. Again, simply look for AKA Sports, or you can find us on a myriad of podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If you're not sure exactly which one to go to, simply go to anchor.fm/AKA Sports and pick from the 6 different various options, or you can simply go to facebook.com/AKA Sports FB as well. Find us, listen to us, comment, subscribe, notify, hit all those things. We will be here every single Sunday. Monday mornings we'll be popping it out. So again, simply go to anchor.fm/AKA Sports and find us where you find all your other podcasts. And with me, as always, my man, simply known as Fletch. Fletch, how you been?
And good, man. I'm glad to be back. Glad to be back. Thanks for holding down the fort last week.
Hey, you know what? When you're not there, somebody's got to do it. So I am have no problems doing just that. And what a crazy week it has been. Obviously, the first actual week of college football has started. A lot of games. There's actually a good game on right now between Florida State and Notre Dame. But a little bit more of the craziness this week is ESPN airing the fictional school known as Bishop Sycamore playing on ESPN, a highly touted team that was supposed to have so many prospects and a head coach that knew what he was doing. And well, they went out there and scored 0 points. They lost 58 to nothing. And people started to question exactly what was going on. Fletch, I know we talked about it. What exactly is going on?
Man, a lot of nonsense. A lot of nonsense. IMG Academy, we know is a well-known school in the athletic field, but we didn't know about these guys, and then they got exposed real bad. I've never seen anything like this, man. Yeah, what was it, Clark? JUCO players, arrest warrants. Man, it was a plethora of just nonsense, man.
Yes, this fictional school came out of Columbus, Ohio. They were actually staying in a hotel in Delaware, Ohio, for about 5 months, according to one of their highly touted prospects slash basically non-high school players. They only went to school one time, and that was at the Franklin Public Library, so they can actually get their quote-unquote teaching in. But yes, just as you mentioned, the high school coach already had, or I wouldn't even call him a high school coach, a JUCO
No.
coach at this point had an arrest warrant on him. All these players are super old, and they got manhandled by high school players at an academy that knows how to play football. What
Yes.
really shocks me is the fact that either ESPN or the company that they use to schedule these games, simple Google search, something. Like, why are you taking that somebody's word for it? Yeah, it's going to look bad. It's going to continue to look bad for ESPN. But hey, if you really want to be on ESPN, all you have to do is put some people together and say, hey, we got some players, and you might just make it. So, Fletch, this is your chance. This is your time. But we will continue forward with the craziness what was of week one. Presbyterian in the FCS scoring 84 points, and their quarterback setting the FCS record for 10 passing touchdowns. Now, granted, this coach didn't punt the entire time, had multiple onside kicks. What kind of really felt like a video game. You imagine throwing 10 touchdown passes in a game?
And I've never heard of it, never seen it. Hey, shout out to Presbyterian. That you got to get it how you live. Sometime. I mean, I'm good with it. Just go play ball. If you want your offense to have, if your offense is that potent and that's your way of getting the ball back, I mean, go for it, man. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, I mean, really, any level, any type of aggressive play
Yep.
is going to be rewarded. Obviously, if you just continue to go with the conventionality of everything, it may not work out for you. So, hats off to them, and hopefully, Bishop Sycamore can get their teaching license here soon. So maybe they can actually become a high school team. But for this week, we've got a lot to talk about. We have the MLB playoffs we'll be talking about, along with our news and notes. We'll also be doing our NFL show, a lot of our predictions as well. So let's go ahead and get into it for the MLB postseason. As of this recording, right now, the Yankees and the Red Sox, along with the Mariners, Blue Jays, and A's all have an outside shot of making the playoffs in the wild card. There's really a chance for the Mariners, who are winning five straight. They're only several games back within their own division. That would be very interesting if they catch up with the Astros. In the NL East, that's really the closest division. Speaking of, we got the Braves leading, but we still have the Phillies and the Mets not that far behind, and they are combined with the Padres and the Reds, along with the Cardinals, vying for that last wild card spot in the NL, with a lovely gift, an amazing gift to go in the first round and play either the 86 win Giants or the 86 win Dodgers. Whichever one you want, someone's going
Good
to win
luck.
that prize. Yeah, no kidding. So that is your up to date MLB standings. Moving on, last week we had mentioned that Jake Paul had a fight. Fletch, you saw it. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I saw it. Saw it. It was I'll be honest, man. The card was entertaining. To say that I was surprised. So, um, what I will say is this: I think the powers that be had predetermined the winner on this one, Clark. Um, I mean, there's no secret that boxing is a somewhat of a rigged sport. Let's just call it like it is. There's a lot of politics involved. They like to push their favorites, and I mean, we've seen it happen. And some of my favorites have benefited from this, including Floyd Money Mayweather. But man, with this one, I'll be honest. I'm completely with Tyron Woodley on this one, man. I don't understand the judge that said that he only won 2 rounds. I watched the fight, man. There was multiple rounds he won. This one could have gone either way, split decision, could have been a draw. I just don't see Jake Paul winning in the landslide that he won. And the people that I watched the fight with, I told them before the fight. I feel like I should have bet on this one, man. I'll be honest with you. But what I told them is this: if it's not a knockout, Jake Paul will win by some sort of decision. And I mean that's what happened. I think also too this shows me that Jake Paul again, and I've been saying this, he needs to fight an actual boxer. I love these MMA guys, but these MMA guys they're a little bit outside of their wheelhouse. They're fighters, they're not boxers. There's a little bit of a difference. Stance, the stamina, because you only go 3 to 5 rounds in boxing, or excuse me, in the octagon in MMA. And boxing, you go 8 to 12 rounds. So there's a few things that goes into it that I really believe that Jake Paul is now ready for real boxers, and I think this is just something to get him over.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because he did come out and say that it might have been his last boxing fight. He said he was going to
I believe that.
retire, but I kind of get the feeling, and maybe you share that same feeling too, is just it's just a stunt just to continue on. There's going to be money fights down the road that he is going to go into. Um,
He did backpedal that on Twitter. Next
oh,
day
he
he came
did.
out. Yeah, yeah. He recanted what he said. I mean, he left the tweet up. He didn't delete it. It's entertainment. It's entertainment. So I mean, when he tweeted, I mean, I don't think most believed it. But one thing I will say, Clark, is we need a rematch before he goes to fight a real boxer. We do need a rematch. Um, Tyron Woodley's getting a tattoo in ring. I believe Jake Paul said, if you get the tattoo, we'll do it again. I need to see it again. Um, and Tyron Woodley should have won the fight. We'll note that. I'm okay with the split decision for Jake Paul to a degree, even though that one judge was just. I mean, I've seen worse things, unnecessarily worse. But thankfully, this was at least ruled a close fight with one of the judges having Woodley win, and I think it warrants a rematch. And like you said, man, he's a money grab. Again, like, I'm a big boxing guy. Like that's the one thing that lacks in MMA. There's no money grabs. I mean, Dana White ultimately controls all that. And you have the war of words with Dana White and Jake Paul because Jake Paul thinks he should pay his fighters more, and I'll be honest, I do agree. But on the flip side, I understand why that's tough. But yeah, if any MMA fighter wants to go get some money, you know who to call. You got to call them Paul brothers
Absolutely. So it'd be
or
very
Floyd.
interesting. Oh, absolutely. He'll definitely do it for any kind of money, especially big money.
Oh
No
yeah.
problems there. Uh, the rest of the news coming from the first week of college football. Obviously, we had some very interesting games happen this past weekend. The two that we want to mention was Georgia Clemson, a very defensive
Hmm.
battle the entire game. Georgia ended up winning 10-3. Really showed that both defenses can play very, very well, and the offenses maybe not quite there yet, but again, they were facing some tough defenses. I watched that game. We were actually in the middle of a fantasy draft during that game. It really seemed like the defenses were really, really good. We'll see what their offenses look like against much easier opponents in the coming weeks. Um, and we'll see exactly what happens. But I really like what Georgia's doing. Would like to see them do a little bit better on the offensive side of things. Whereas for Clemson, again, it's kind of the same thing, but with Dabo Sweeney, this is a nice loss to have on your resume towards the end of the season. You know they're not going to face any type of this type of defense throughout the rest of their ACC conference or their schedule. So this is a very nice loss to have on your resume. But if the offense is going to continue to struggle even against lesser defenses throughout the year, uh, it could allow someone like a Florida State who's playing well tonight, or maybe that Virginia Tech team that upset North Carolina on Friday could potentially sneak in there as an
Yep.
ACC champion. Any other thoughts on this game?
I mean, overall, it was a game loaded with future NFL talent. That's one thing that can't be mistaken. As low scoring as the game was, I just believe these defenses are far ahead of these offenses. And one thing that's different from last year, Clark, is yeah, I feel like this weekend has showed me that we had to kind of erase our memories of what happened last year with a lot of teams not really fully equipped with their players due to, teams sitting out due to COVID protocol or just because they don't want to get COVID, they set out a few injuries as well. I think we saw what a full offseason for some of these teams look like and what shape these defenses are right now. Georgia's defense is a force to be reckoned with, is what this game told me. I see no reason why they don't challenge Alabama. I think their defense is that good. Now, offensively, I would take Alabama's offense over them, 99 times out of 100. But as of right now, I got to commend Georgia's defense. As far as the landscape of the college football, ACC had a poor week. Um, let's just call it like it is. The best two teams laid an egg. Um, I expected a lot more out of Clemson's offense, especially knowing that the quarterback actually got some reps last year in two big games when Trevor Lawrence was out with COVID protocol. So, um, we'll get into the my final four later, but I think this does put a hurt on the ACC overall.
Correct. And like we mentioned with Clemson, really this was their biggest test that they had on their schedule all season long. Luckily, it was a very close game and they didn't get blown out. Otherwise,
True.
you could easily see an ACC team not making the playoffs this year. As for a potential upset, we almost saw that this weekend with Oklahoma Tulane of all games. A very
Yep.
close game, very at the very end. Tulane had the chance to at least get back into that game. I think it was to tie or take the lead, I believe,
Hmm.
to take the lead or take the lead late in that game, and they just couldn't quite get it done. There was a lot of talk this offseason about Oklahoma's defense, about it's supposed to be better and improved, and maybe Tulane's offense is just that good, or maybe Oklahoma's defense just still isn't there. Offensively, they can score, but defensively, that was a struggle. Kind of
Well,
kind of reminding us exactly what the Big 12 is they can score, but defensively they're going to continue to struggle.
very true. Very true. One thing to note with this game, I know you mentioned the offense, and Spencer Rattler is a Heisman candidate, rightfully so. No knock on the kid at all. But one thing is to be mentioned: they scored 3 points in the entire second half. I think that's glaring to say the least. They were outscored 21-3 in the second half. And honestly, if Tulane could do something with the ball in the last 2 minutes, we do see an upset. Also, that game was moved from a home game for Tulane to Oklahoma due to Hurricane Ida. So that's a lot. That's a lot. That says a lot about Tulane. And I don't know what it says about Oklahoma, to be honest with you, man. I just touching on this really quickly. I think the top five has to change quite a bit. I mean, Bama's clearly number one, is what we've seen this weekend with the washing of Miami that they did. I just don't see how we can leave Oklahoma at number two when you scored 3 points in the second half against Tulane. Um, if you were on the road, Some say you might lose. This was like a home field advantage kind of a deal too, and you only beat them by 5. And you know the defense, like you said, you mentioned that as well. I mean, you gave up 21 points in the second half, 13 in the fourth. And Clark, I text you, and you were like, they need an what did you say? They need a defensive stop or an onside kick, and then they got the onside kick, and then just couldn't do anything with it. If they do something with that, I mean, that spoils Oklahoma season, first week. So I don't know. The landscape in the top 5 has to absolutely change for me. I believe the winner of that Georgia Clemson game, which is Georgia, I think they should slide all the way up to number 2. I think Ohio State should be the 3, and then I personally I really don't know who's fourth. Texas A&M. I mean, it's hard to say right now.
Yeah, it's still fairly early, but I 100%
Right.
agree with you. Alabama clearly the number one. They just look as elite as they can be at this point. And then Oklahoma definitely is going to have to drop back behind Georgia, who looked extremely impressive this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Some could argue with Ohio State. I know they were kind of hit and miss at times. Offensively, they looked really good. When they needed a score, it was quick and it was a long touchdown. It was not a elongated drive that took a lot of time
Strikes.
off the clock. It was quick strikes, but defensively they're not quite there yet, but there's still quite the season yet to go. So we'll see
That's something
how
to
it.
mention too. Clark, sorry to cut you off,
No,
man,
you're
about the
fine.
Buckeyes. You know, I got my background changed this week. It's the first time in since we started this bad boy that I had to switch over to my Buckeyes. But what I will say is this, and I'm not to sound like a homer, um, but I think we forgot how good this Minnesota team was. This was the same Minnesota team that was 11-2 2 years ago. And if you were watching that game Thursday night, I believe they mentioned that they were missing like 25 some odd players last year due to COVID, like just sitting out due to COVID or injury. And, with the shortened season, they only won, I think, what, 2 or 3 games. Um, this is not the same Minnesota team of 2020. This is the Minnesota team of 2019. And also, what's to mention is the running back amongst a few other seniors on that team. They started as freshmen back in 2018 when PJ Fleck took over. That I believe this is his first recruiting class that is now seniors, if I'm not mistaken, and they look legit. I mean, I understand not being ranked coming into the season, but they do look legit. And I think that's something to keep in mind during the Big Ten season is once we start to see how Iowa, Wisconsin, Penn State, Michigan, even once we see Indiana, once we see these ranked teams and near ranked teams, we start to really see them develop. I think you'll see Minnesota slowly rise, pretty quickly. Um, Kind of contradicted myself slowly over the course of the next, I don't know, 5 to 8 weeks. Once we see them with some good quality Big Ten matchups, so just keep an eye out on for those guys in the Big Ten landscape is what I want to mention, and then we'll see what Ohio State can do next week. They got another big test coming up, so.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned earlier, you wanted to talk about your final four teams, a little bit of a prediction that we were going to be doing last week. We had to postpone it until this week. First week of games not really that big of a deal at this point, unless one of your picks is Washington, who got upset this past weekend. But who are your final four?
Well, I'll be honest. This week actually did sway me a bit. My final four, I think Alabama is going to be the surefire number one, the favorites. I don't see them losing. Possibly to Georgia, who I don't know is on the. I can't remember if they're on the schedule or not, but we know if that happens, it'll be the title game for the SEC. But they're still not my number one. My number two team that I think will finish there at the end of the season is Ohio State. I just think how they played, you can definitely tell there's room to improve, but I think they'll get better as the season goes on. We haven't really seen a bad Ohio State defense in a long time, so you got to think that's going to change. You're not going to be playing against 7 offensive lineman sets every week, so that's going to change. Number 3, let me double check here. I have Georgia. Win or lose the SEC, they're going to be in the title game. I think they're going to win out, and I think they may lose in the championship. And I think you'll see a 1-2 game versus Georgia and Alabama in the title game. And I'll give that to Alabama and Georgia to slide down to the 3 or the 4, just depending on how the playoff committee feels. And I'm 4, man, Clark. That's going to be my sleeper or my the first time we'll see a group of 5 school. I'm going with Cincinnati. And I'm going to just say why really quick. After what I saw with Oklahoma, I don't trust them. They're going to play much better teams than Tulane. Yes, they're going to play a little bit better. I get that, but I don't trust this defense. I don't trust them to just win out. So I think they're going to drop a game. Um, the ACC has shot themselves in the foot. Clemson or North Carolina should have been in this title game. I don't see if Oklahoma, or excuse me, if Alabama, Ohio State, and a one-loss Georgia team and an undefeated Cincinnati team, I don't see how a one-loss ACC team tops that. Unless Clemson runs the table and this is their only loss, and say they meet, a very, good opponent in the ACC title game and destroy them. I mean, they do have a shot to get back there. That's what honestly, that's what was going to draw the most money over Cincinnati. Let's just be real about it. But yeah, and outside of that, man, I just don't see anybody else running the table. I think these losses will hurt to the point where Cincinnati, who's already ranked high, will be able to slide into the playoff. If they weren't ranked as high as they were now, then I wouldn't pick them. But they're eighth now. Did what they were supposed to do against Miami of Ohio, and I mean, you got to think they're gonna run the table in the AAC. And also they have a Heisman candidate at their quarterback position as well. So,
And interesting you bring that up. Who is your Heisman candidate for this year that you think is going to win it all?
hey man, I'm sticking with Bam on this one, man. I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. We're going chalk. I'm going Bryce Young.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. The way Alabama looked this past weekend with Bryce Young throwing a record 4 touchdown passes for your first start at Alabama, that's pretty good company to be in to have
He's the
that
real
record.
deal.
Yeah, he looks very, very good. It's interesting you brought up Cincinnati. I really liked him as a sleeper pick, but it really kind of, based on what Clemson did against Georgia, it really, just like to your note, pushing towards a another year of a Georgia Alabama final. Just really showing exactly how good the SEC is. It'll be interesting to see what Ohio State does next week at home against Oregon. That's supposed to be a highly touted game. I did see that Oregon's top player, a top five NFL draft pick potentially in this next coming draft, was in a walking boot after that game. So we'll
Yeah.
see exactly what happens there. I think that's really the biggest trip up for Ohio State this season. They could potentially see themselves in the Final Four if, obviously, if they win out and win the Big Ten. Notre Dame's another name to keep in there, depending on what they do tonight against Florida State. And really, Florida State's also a name. I'm not thrilled by that pick, but it's kind of one of those dark horses of, Clemson could be down this year. North Carolina's already lost.
Yeah.
There's nobody else, so somebody's got to win the ACC. So
Mm-hmm.
it'd be interesting to see what happens in the coming weeks. And before we move on to the NFL that starts this Thursday, let's talk about our sponsor, Legit Framing. Again, you've got to have some signed memorabilia. I know you do. It's in your closet. You've had it sitting there forever. You really want a way to, show it off to your friends. Maybe during your drafts. Your drafts are finally finishing up this week before the first game on Thursday. A great way to do that is to go to Legit Framing. Get it framed. Nice wood frame, styrene front, player photos, team logos. Have it and show it off. And then your friends might want one as well. Best way to do that is to go to facebook.com/legitframing or send us an email at legitframing@hotmail.com. Get a free quote. Figure out exactly what you want to do. Maybe it's not a jersey. Maybe you want to do cards. Maybe you do want to do Pokemon cards. That's always a good route as well. They're hot. I know Fletch has been dabbling in that area. He's got kids. So at this point, again, if you're interested, simply go to facebook.com/legitframing or legitframing@hotmail.com. Legit Framing, create your next conversation piece. And now let's move on, Fletch. We are talking about our 2021 NFL predictions, and we will start off in the AFC, and we'll start off specifically in the AFC East. Last year's the way it finished out was Buffalo Bills won 6 straight games to finish 13-3. They won the division, and then the Dolphins were next at 10-6, the Patriots at 7-9, and the Jets at 2-14. I've taken a look over these. I'll go ahead and make my prediction here first. I know the Dolphins are a good defense. We'll see what happens with a healthy Tua Tagovailoa. See exactly what happens there. Maybe have a Jalen Waddle or a Will Fuller sighting with that offense. That's really kind of the biggest crutch with that team is if they can't get the offense going, their defense just isn't quite enough. I don't think Mac Jones is really going to do it. I've got Buffalo winning this one pretty easily. Fletch, who do you got in the AFC East?
AFC East, actually like the AFC East. I think it's very competitive this year. I think you have three potential teams that can make the playoffs. I think they'll get one personally, and I think you have the other two knocking on the door with better than 500 records. Thank God for the 17 game schedule. No more 500 teams. However, I got Buffalo like you do. I think they'll win north of 11 to 12 games. I don't think anybody else will win more than 10. I think they'll have it wrapped up before the season ends, and Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and those boys, and the defense is young and still young and upcoming, but they're really good as they are. So just be on the lookout for them. They played really well last year, and they can make a lot of noise. So I got them winning the East.
Absolutely. Now let's move on to the AFC North. The AFC North was heavily competitive last year. The top of the division was the Pittsburgh Steelers of all teams, finishing 12 and 4. Then you had the Ravens are running off five straight to finish 11 and 5, edging out the Browns, who also finished at the same record. And then the Bengals finished 4 and 11 and 1 on the year. Fletch, we'll start with you. Who do you have in the AFC North this year?
Right now, my favorite division in football. Hard nose, in your face, very physical. I like all these teams this year. I think there's obviously a ceiling with Cincinnati, where I just don't feel like they'll be good enough to even be near the playoffs, so we can rule them out. Even though Joe Burrow, I would love to see what they look like for 17 games. Um, Hey man, it's to be honest, we might see all three of these teams in the playoffs again. I think all three of them have the possibility of winning 11 games. Now that record would be 11-6, which I think is very doable for all three of those teams. This year, I have the Browns. I think the Browns get over the hump as far as the divisional hump. They've been in the playoffs. They have a very good team. Baker Mayfield is I want to just mention this stat to you, Clark. I saw this a while back. Last season, when Baker Mayfield had a QBR of over 80, they were 8-0 in those games. We had a QBR of 50, from 50 up to 80. They were still 2-1 in those games. That's how many wins did they? How many games did they win last year, Clark?
11 games.
That's 10 of them. So that tells me, if we can get consistent quarterback play out of Baker Mayfield, which we did last year, and say let's make that even more consistent because every game under 50 they lost except for one, I believe. That's going to go a long way. So I got the Browns this year. I think he'll develop, even further. Odell Beckham is back, and I think you're going to get a really good. This is probably the best Odell Beckham I think we'll see in Cleveland. I don't know if he'll ever reach those Giants days, but for that reason, along with that backfield, which is again probably the best backfield in the league, I'm gonna roll. I'm gonna roll with the Browns on this by a game. And when I mean a game, I mean literally either they're gonna win the division by a game or a tiebreaker. I think it's gonna be that close.
And I can't fault you for that pick. Really, any three of these teams could easily win the division or make the playoffs at this point. I don't think the Steelers are going to do it again. Their schedule last year was super easy for the first half of the season. Then they ran into some actual teams that they played and kind of skidded their way through and winning that division. For me, it was really between the Ravens and the Browns. I'm going to choose the Ravens this season. I know they lost J.K. Dobbins in the preseason. That's a pretty big blow. But when you have a quarterback that's run for over 1,000 yards, the only one to do it in consecutive seasons, and the hope and the prayer that they're going to get that passing game going again. Obviously, they still have a very young receiving core, a couple of them injured at this point, but they still have Mark Andrews. They're going to get week one Sammy Watkins going for at least one game, at least. Uh, but I like the Ravens. They're going to play good defense. The offense is going to be much better than what you saw last year. I think again, very similar to your Browns pick. It's going to be just by just a smidgen. It's going to be super, super close. Maybe in the last week of the season, getting into the playoffs as a division winner. But I have them winning the AFC North. Moving forward to the AFC South, it was a two-horse race last year. It was the Tennessee Titans winning the division, the Indianapolis Colts getting into the playoffs. Both of them finishing 11 and 5. Then there's the other side of that division where you have the Texans finishing 4 and 12, and then the Jacksonville Jaguars won the first game of the season and lost 15 straight to end the year. Uh, Quite the long season for any team.
Very long.
Yeah, you're not wrong. So for this division, I don't see the Titans really moving. The Colts got Carson Wentz as an addition this past year, but they're dealing with so many issues with what seemed like a foot issue. Then they had COVID. I don't know if they're going to be healthy all season long and be able to run the ball as well as they can and get that passing game going, depending on which Carson Wentz we're going to see. And then for the bottom, the Jaguars might improve from a one-game winning season to maybe 4 or 5. And then you have the Texans who have Tyrod Taylor as their quarterback. Uh, I see them staying at the bottom. I've got the Titans winning this division. Who do you got?
Chalk again, Clark. I got the Titans in this one as well. Um, I'll say this about the Colts though, man. Do not be surprised if they do win the division. Um, I don't know how many times we've seen these teams gain a great player and then they don't live up to expectations right away, at least during that first year. I don't think Tennessee will falter, but keep an eye out for that. I think Tannehill's good enough to not really make that mistake. But the thing is, you mentioned it. If Carson Wentz could play like Carson Wentz in Philly before, um, I don't know what happened during that last season he was there, but if he can get back to that, he has his OC as his from his near MVP season as his head coach. Him and Quentin Nelson both had to go through the same surgery and both seem ready to play week one. Jonathan Taylor is a stud, and they brought back Marlon Mack along with Naheem Himes in the backfield. So you have three guys that are capable, and that defense is really good still, along with Darius Leonard to lead them. So um, I'm just going to go with the Titans, and I will mention this as well. Do not be surprised if the Jaguars are above 500.
Wow, above 500, even with a rookie quarterback. A lot of young talent around. They lost Travis Etienne to a Liz Frank injury, and you have them at 500?
Possibly, possibly. I'm saying
Wow.
don't be surprised. I would, if I had to pick right now, they're going to win 7 to 8 games. I mean, that's literally two close wins to basically bump them up to 8 or 9 games. 9 games is above 500. I think they can do nine. I don't see them in the playoffs. I think the AFC is too stacked for them to make the playoffs, but I do see a lot of improvement. Because if you remember, Clark, I mean, let's be real, they were clearly tanking last year. There were some winnable games, and they just decided not to win those, in my opinion.
Okay. Very bold statement. Let me see if you can get a little bit bolder with your AFC West division pick. Who you got?
I wish I could pick my beloved Broncos, but let's be real, man. The Chiefs got that division locked for. Hey, man, that division is locked probably for a while. Every year until somebody's hurt, or unless the Broncos or the Raiders or the Chargers can somehow get on the same level as these guys. That division's on lock for a little while. Um, Not really much need to go deep into it. I just think that division will be won by a minimum of 3 games, maybe more.
I would totally agree. I have the Chiefs winning that division as well. Last year they finished 14 and 2, the Raiders 8 and 8, the Chargers 7 and 9, and the Broncos 5 and 11. Honestly,
Exactly.
with your beloved Broncos, I truly believe that they will have probably the biggest upgrade this season. I truly believe that they could get above 500 this year with Teddy Bridgewater actually throwing catchable passes this year. Will definitely help things moving along. The running game is always good. The defense has always been great, but they have to play 95% on the field at all times. Not going to beat the Chiefs. The Chiefs are just too loaded, too good. The Raiders are always a 500 club. This year, they're actually going to have to be something other than 8 and 8, unless they have a tie somewhere along the lines. But again, I like the Chiefs as well. Fletch, before we move on to the NFC, who do you have coming out of the AFC in your Super Bowl?
Yes, sir. We're going back to the AFC West. We're going with the Chiefs again. I think they're going to go back to the Super Bowl for the third straight year. Um, there was talks that Pat Mahomes and those guys want to go undefeated. Something just to watch for. I mean, how many games did they win? 14 last year.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't even know. Like, we can go back and look. Like, I don't even know what they're averaging the last 3 years in wins, but you got to think it's up there. So just be on the lookout for that. But I got Chiefs coming out the division. I think the playoffs will be a tough stretch for them because again, I do believe the AFC is a very loaded conference this year. With 7 game or 7 teams being allowed in the playoffs, I think you get a lot of quality teams in, and I think you get some quality teams that miss the playoffs. So yeah, but I got the Chiefs. I got the Chiefs. They'll get home field, get that first round bye, and then they'll win those games they need to.
I agree. It's really hard to go against the Chiefs. I know there's some other
Right.
teams you could potentially look at, like a Ravens Browns team. I know the Browns were playing really, really good against the Chiefs last year in the playoffs, and
Mhm.
just couldn't quite get it done. Buffalo is going to continue to push. So, really, one of those teams, but again, just like you mentioned with all those points, it's the Chiefs. They're clearly the best of the AFC. Some things will have to go drastically wrong for them not to make it to the Super Bowl, at least in my opinion. But that's why we play the games to figure out who's going to win it all.
Mhm.
Let's go ahead and move on to the NFC and the saddest division in football last year, the NFC East. The division winner was 7-9. That was the Washington football team. The Giants and Cowboys both finished 6-10, and then the Eagles finished 4-11-1. I'll start things off. This one, again, with all these teams here, a lot of it due to injuries. The Eagles were dealing with injuries on their front line, their receiving core. They had a rookie quarterback they brought in late in that season. Dallas lost Prescott in week 4 or 5, I believe, to a broken ankle, catastrophic injury, but they should have him for week 1 starting this Thursday against the Buccaneers. The Giants, again, they seem to have just a lot of negative press coming out of their preseason and a lot of their training camp. I'm not really in love with them. Their defense can play well. I will say that. They do have a very strong defense, but it's not as strong as my division winner, the Washington football team. I really believe that they will get it done. Fletch, who is your NFC East?
Yeah, I was also the Washington football team, and I'll be honest, I was a little reluctant to pick them. But I'm rolling with them. I think 7-9 for them, even though that was enough to win a division, normally shouldn't be. But I think that was a very good season for them, especially with the circumstances. Now they have at least a quasi decent quarterback in Ryan Fitzpatrick. You got the Taylor Heineke kid that played pretty well last year to back him up. But I really like what they're doing with Antonio Gibson. You got Terry McLaurin, you got Chase Young on defense, Montez Sweat on defense. I really love their defense, by the way. I think they lead the league in sacks. But overall, I think they're a really good team, and I don't think that many games is necessary to win the division. The only reason I was reluctant to pick them is I'm expecting the Cowboys to have probably the most or the best offense in the league. But that defense is Swiss cheese, man. So I don't know. That's why I didn't pick the Cowboys.
Yeah, it's going to be another year of your defense gives up 30, so your offense has to score at least
Yeah.
40 to really stay in it. And I was kind of going back and forth on that same topic as well. I really like the Cowboys' offense, but that defense just isn't there. And
Can't stop a nosebleed.
yeah, it is very, very difficult. Moving on to the NFC North last year, the Green Bay Packers rolled off 6 straight wins to finish 13-3. The Bears made it to the playoffs with an 8-8 record. The Vikings finished 7-9, and the Detroit Lions finished 5-11. And as much as I would like to pick against anything else, there's no way I'm going against Aaron Rodgers in what seems to be his final year there in Green Bay. Did you pick the same?
Yes, it's the last dance, and he's gonna do everything he needs to do to possibly win a championship. Everything within his power, at least. So they're gonna win the division. Don't expect the division to be a blowout, but expect them to win. I do think you'll get some really good play out of the Bears again. Defense is really good. Depending on that quarterback situation, I would have to wait and see because they got two different quarterbacks than they had last year. At least, as your 1 and 2. Last year it was Trubisky and Foles as your 1 and 2, and this year You got Dalton and Fields as your 1 and 2, and you got to think Fields will take over the job at some point because I feel like he clearly outplayed Andy Dalton in the preseason. No reason why you don't trade up and pick him. So I think it's possible you'll see Fields some way, throughout the season if Dalton's really not cutting it. But yeah, man, you can't. That's the MVP. There's no way I'm going against the MVP. Um, he's going to put on a show this year, man, and I think we just got to sit back and enjoy it.
Absolutely. Again, I would just like to your points. I would like to see the Bears kind of push them a little bit. Maybe even the Vikings, if that defense
Yeah.
has improved last year. We know the Lions are going to sit in that fourth spot and just be very, very happy to sit there. But for the rest of the way, yeah, it's the Packers at this point. Moving on to the NFC South, we saw the division winner last year. Maybe some of us kind of forgot, but it was the Saints winning the division at 12-4. The Buccaneers finished 11-5 and was your eventual Super Bowl champions last year from the wild card. The Panthers finished 5-11, and the Falcons finished 4-12. Fletch, I think I knew who you're going to pick, but tell everybody else who you're going to pick.
Hey, at this point, you don't bet against LeBron James. You don't bet against Tom Brady. This is basic, very basic. Especially Drew Brees isn't there anymore. I could see if you had another Hall of Fame level quarterback to threaten that division, but no disrespect to Matt Ryan, but he's not it. That team is definitely not it. You'll see a lot of the same out of the Falcons that you did last year. You'll see a lot of the same out of the Panthers, minus the fact that they did bring in, Sam Darnold and you got McCaffrey coming back. I just don't see them winning many games still. That could be a fun team to watch though. I will say that, but I just don't see them threatening the division. I think the Saints will actually be very good this year if Winston can cut down on turnovers. I think he has as a coach that actually likes him, so I think that may help just a little bit in that department. So I mean, I think the Saints may still make the playoffs, but yeah, man. Old man Brady over there. I'm not denying that. You got a whole year with Antonio Brown and Gronk now, along with the other guys that have been there already. Another year with Little Fournette too, and Bruce Arians is. I mean, he's as good as a coach as he's always been. I mean, we've seen what he's able to do in Arizona and now here in Tampa Bay. I got to give it to these guys, and I think you'll see something very similar to what the Chiefs will be doing if north of 13 wins this year.
Agreed. There's really no other team to pick in that division. It's nice to see Run CMC for a full season, hopefully. Maybe allow the Panthers and new quarterback Sam Darnold reuniting with his old teammate back in the Jets of Robbie Anderson. Should be interesting, but there's nobody there unless Jameis Winston comes out and throws for 5,030 again. There's really that's the only team that might have a chance at beating the Buccaneers this year. They're just too good. I could easily see them making their way back into the Super Bowl. Uh, to the NFC West, last year's division champ, the Seattle Seahawks at 12-4, the Rams at 10-6, the Cardinals at 8-8, and my unhealthy Niners at 6-10. I will start us off here. I would love to see my Niners stay healthy. They have not shown it yet this preseason, so I don't suspect them really having a phenomenal year. It is only a matter of time before Trey Lance becomes a starter there and Sam Fran. As for the Cardinals, as long as Kyler Murray can stay healthy and the defense can be productive, I think they could improve and push this division to be a three-team race towards the playoffs. I like what the Rams did, bringing in Matthew Stafford, upgrading their quarterback position. They did lose a couple of key guys on the defensive side of the ball, so we'll see exactly how that plays out for them. For me, I'm going to keep with last year, and I'm going to stay with the Seahawks as the division champion, but we could easily see two, maybe even three teams coming out of the division into the playoffs. Fletch, who do you got?
Hey man, Clark, I don't mind the pick. I like the Seahawks a little bit. I don't trust their defense though. I'm not sure if I trust the offensive lineman either. But Russell Wilson is a guy that's hard to bet against as well. Um, I think this. So I say the AFC North is probably my favorite division and the best division. I think this is a very close second. Um, Only reason I'm saying second is I think the teams in the AFC North overall may be a little bit I don't know, maybe it's slightly better as far as they got three teams that are really fighting for like not just above 500, but you're talking about north of 11 wins for all three of these guys, and with an extra game, you can possibly see all three win 12. Whereas in the NFC West, yeah, you can see that, but you haven't seen that from the Cardinals yet. You don't know if the Niners can stay healthy. What I will say though is this: if this is a healthy division, this could be a four-team race. I don't think the 49ers have been as, or I think the 49ers have been as good as what they were when they went to the Super Bowl had they been healthy. Not maybe not quite as good, but at least good enough to make the playoffs. We'll say near as good, right? So I think you'll see if they can stay healthy, they can make a lot of noise. If the Seahawks can do what they did last year, of course they'll make a lot of noise. Got very good receiving core out there. Um, the Rams are my pick. I do like the Cardinals as well. I don't know what to expect exactly from them in terms of wins. I know what to expect from them as far as the team goes. But in regards to wins, I don't know how many wins that really will translate to. I'll put them over 500 slightly, maybe 9-8, 10-6, 10-7. But yeah, man, I got the Rams. I really believe in the Rams this year. I think that is another team that can really show, what they are capable of. I think you have a much better quarterback than what you had before. No knock on Jared Goff because I think he's at least decent. He's a game manager. He can make some throws, but Matt Stafford can make all the throws. Matt Stafford had a 5,000-yard passing season, I think, with I don't even remember if that was with Calvin Johnson or not. I think it was, but you got to think who else was he throwing the ball to? Now you have a Robert Woods, a Cooper Cup. You got they're always running back by committee even without Cam Akers. So you got that going for you. McVay has a very creative offensive style that I think Matt Stafford will embrace, and that defense has. We talked about it when the Madden rankings came out. You got two guys that are rated 99 on defense there with Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald. So you got to think, you got one guy shutting down half the field, one guy that's going to create chaos and decimate offensive linemen. I mean, you just need the rest of the defense to fill in the holes. So I got the Rams. I really like the Rams this year.
Very, very nice pick. So we'll see exactly how our picks go. Before we move on to our pick six for the week, Fletch, who do you have coming out of the NFC to face the Chiefs in the Super Bowl?
Hey man, I'm sticking with those boys out west. This is an all west Super Bowl. We got Chiefs versus the Rams. I really believe in the Rams. I think Stafford again is going to embrace this, and don't be surprised if they win the Super Bowl. As of right now, that is my pick.
Very nice. I'd hate to see it, but I really feel like we're going to go to a straight rematch from last year's Super Bowl. Unfortunately, it's probably going to be Brady versus Mahomes, part two at this point. The Buccaneers are just too good. They brought back literally every single person from that championship team, something that hasn't been done for quite some time, if ever. I really like what they're doing here. And before we also want to mention who's your MVP candidate, your Defensive Player of the Year, your Rookie of the Year, all those fun little awards.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I appreciate you letting me have the floor on this one. So I like what you mentioned. I think the masses would love to see that. I do want to mention that in this age of free agency and players deciding and dictating where they want to go, you don't see that happen. You don't see the entire team come back. So shout out to the Bucks for making that happen. Um, I still think the Rams pull it off, but that's just me. As far as the awards goes, I have this year. I do think he takes another step and wins the MVP. I have the Bills quarterback Josh Allen. I believe he was like third in quarterback, or excuse me, in MVP voting last year, and I think he'll take another step. It's very hard to go back to back, so I can see Aaron Rodgers having an MVP like season, and because it's his last in Green Bay, I can see voters voting for him. I could also see Brady or Mahomes also having a very strong case, along with possibly Russell Wilson that you mentioned as well with the Seahawks. And but I think overall, man, I really like Josh Allen to possibly do it this year, not just because of what he can do with his arm, but also what he can do with his leg. They don't have much of a running game like these other teams do. Um, going to kind of struggle with two guys going back and forth. You have injuries a lot of times in the backfield where you have the Packers have Aaron Jones, you have the Bucks have Fournette and Rojo, along with Giovanni Bernard that you just brought in. The Chiefs had Edwards Alaire. I mean, all the rest of these teams have running backs, right? The Bills really don't have a solid guy to give the ball to. So Josh Allen's going to take a bigger role than I think these other guys, and I think he's going to show this year, what he's capable of, and I think you'll see his best season yet. Um, you mentioned what is it? What offensive defensive player of the years? I'm going to give the defensive player of the year to I'm gonna be a homer on this one, man. We haven't seen Von Miller in a while, and I think he has a lot to prove. I'm gonna have him as my defensive player of the year. I think he may personally lead the league in sacks. I think runner up, who I want to say who I was leaning towards in the first place is Chase Young as my other guy, and but I'm gonna give it to Von Miller this year. I think you'll see the Von Miller of old, and he'll come back and really, really show what he can do. And also, this is his first year in 3 seasons playing with another pass rusher opposite of him. Bradley Chubb and him have both been hurt on and off the last 2 to 3 seasons, so that'd be something to see as well. Offensive player of the year. It's hard not to pick a quarterback, and it's hard not to just stick with your MVP vote. It's just really the way the NFL works with their voting is very unique. I guess you could say MVPs are typically quarterbacks, but offensive player of the years are typically, skill position players. I'm gonna kind of stick my neck out a little bit, and we'll go Saquon Barkley on a comeback player of the year, but also offensive player of the year. I think he'll be really explosive this year. I dance with the thought of him drafting him with my pick in our draft last night. Injury just deterred me a little bit, but I do think that he'll be amazing this year. So I'm gonna roll with him as my offensive player of the year. Um, Let me see what we got. Rookies, right? Rookies are next.
Yeah.
Um, Defensive rookie of the year. I know I said there's defensive Swiss cheese, but I think this guy will start to kind of change the culture on that defense. He wanted to get drafted out of Penn State by the Cowboys. I'm going with Micah Parsons. I like his game. I like his tenacity. I like his attitude. He's a gamer. Those are my favorite kind of players because no matter how good or bad you are, if you bring it every night, that's it. That's gonna at least do something for you, especially in football where you're not as relied on as you are in say basketball or baseball to just perform individually. So I got Michael Parsons as my defensive rookie of the year and my offensive rookie of the year. I've danced with a couple of different players here, primarily quarterbacks. I would love to see Justin Fields win it, but I don't think he'll start enough games. I would love to see Trey Lance win it. Don't think he'll start enough games. I like what Jacksonville's going to do, but I don't think he's going to be the main reason why they win a ton of games. I think he'll be one of them. I'm going to go with Najee Harris. I think he's going to have a great season. I think he'll have the best rookie season out of all of them. He can run, he can catch, he can block, he can do the whole thing at Alabama, man. So yeah, I got Najee Harris to have an explosive year for the Steelers. They've been looking for a dynamic running back. James Conner really wasn't doing it for him since they lost Le'Veon Bell, and I think this is their future. We don't know what's going to happen with Big Ben. You do know for at least the next, at least 5 years with running backs having such a short shelf life, Najee Harris is going to be the face of the team coming soon.
Yeah, I absolutely like it. I like the Von Miller pick there. Obviously, I would kind of towards your pick of the Rams make the Super Bowl. I wouldn't go against Aaron Donald, at
True.
least to his face anyway. But
Absolutely
definitely,
not.
definitely would be leaning towards that way, but we'll see what happens this upcoming season. And throughout the entire season, Fletch and I, and anybody else that wants to join along, will be doing a pick six pick 'em. Each and every single week, we'll pick 6 games and we'll pick our winners for each one of those games. And then throughout each one of our podcasts, along with all of our Twitter posts and Instagram posts, we'll be keeping an eye on our season long uh, records overall to see exactly who wins. And if you want to get in on it, we'll be posting shortly hereafter exactly how you can put your picks in there, and we'll keep them all put together in one spot and do a weekly update of sorts. So let's go ahead and talk about those pick six as of right now. the 6 games that we have chosen this week. It is the Browns versus the Chiefs. We have the Steelers versus the Bills, the Cardinals versus the Titans, the Cowboys versus the Buccaneers, the Rams versus Bears, and then the Chargers versus the Washington football team. And beforehand, we went ahead and got each other's picks, and 4 of those 6 we agreed upon. We both chose the Chiefs, we both chose the Bills, we both chose the Buccaneers, and we both chose the Rams to win in week 1. Fletch, there's 2 games we disagreed on. Tell me who you got versus or the Cards versus Titans.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I got the Tennessee Titans come out the gate strong. I do think you'll see a healthy dose of Derrick Henry throughout the game. Don't be surprised if he goes off this week. I think Tannehill will do what he needs to do because I think that having those two receivers as a security blanket for you, it will be amazing for him. We talking about big, two strong physical receivers. One of them who arguably is the best in the game, and the other one is arguably one of the best newcomers in the game. So you'll have a very good team that's always been decent defensively, but now offensively, I think they may take another step. We'll see how this goes. I do have the Titans over the Cards.
I like the pick, but it's not as good as mine. I have the Cardinals beating the Titans. It's just the Kyler Murray show. He is just an absolute amazing person, especially when he's healthy and on the field. Last year, he was going to be basically the MVP of the season until about halfway through. He injured his shoulder and really affected what he could do with his abilities on the field. I think the Cardinals are going to shock some people in this first game. It'll be a close one. I don't think they're going to blow them out or anything like to your points, they're going to have Derrick Henry. They've the addition of Julio Jones with AJ Brown out there. Tannehill doesn't make too many mistakes. Uh, there's a lot of good points there, but I think the Cardinals are going to etch this one out just a little bit and get that week 1 and kind of surprise some people. Moving on to the final pick 6 game, Chargers versus the Washington football team. Uh, for me, this one I kind of went back and forth a little bit here. I love Justin Herbert. I love the fact that Austin Eckler is going to be back. Keenan Allen is a man among men out there. And then typically about half the season or maybe a quarter of the season, we see the real Mike Williams show up. As long as he can stay healthy, he is typically a very, very good target out there. Defensively, they are still a very, very strong unit. Obviously, with the Washington football team, we've talked about their defense being extremely good yet again this year, along with the additions of Curtis Samuel and Coach Ron Rivera coming from Carolina, him wanting to implement the same type of offense they were using with Run CMC. So we could easily see Antonio Gibson being a miniature version of Run CMC. I'm not going to put him on the same pedestal there. But for me, I've got the Chargers winning this one, and it's going to be probably by a field goal, maybe take overtime to do it. Fletch, tell me why I'm wrong.
Because Washington is a better football team. No pun intended. No, I do like the football team this year. I think Washington has a very again. I think they'll win the division. I think this is the start of it. I think we see it all the time. Hey, Fitzpatrick shows out the first half of the season. Second half of the season, he proves he's probably a backup, but at least the first half of the season, you know he's going to come out guns blazing. Um, Terry McLaurin's a hell of a receiver, and I think he'll have his best year yet. So be on the lookout for that. And that defense, man, I think they're going to harass Justin Herbert the entire game. So well, and I can't remember where is this game, Clark?
This is in Washington.
Thought so. And more reason why to pick them. I think you're gonna have a ruckus crowd. Remember, there's not many restrictions anymore with having fans in the stands. Um, so just be looking for that, man. I got Washington. I think they went by about 10.
Nothing wrong with that. And just as we did, you can pick these 6 games, send them to us. We will keep them on a nice record, and we will be updating our records throughout the year. Obviously, Fletch at one point will be giving up, but that's fine. You fall far enough behind, eventually you have to tank like the Jacksonville Jaguars did this past season. But again, join in with us. Every single week we'll be picking 6 games, winners of each one, keeping an eye on the records and see exactly how we do. Fletch, before we go here today, I have to ask you what's one coach that's currently in the NFL right now that by maybe halfway point or maybe by the end of the year will not be coaching in the NFL?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a very good question, actually, man. Let me think here. If I had to guess, I am going to go with let's go Joe Judge. I just don't like the Giants at all, and I think he's part of the reason why. Um, if he can't win games this year, I don't see much happening here. So, Joe Judge, I think, is on the hot seat. He's got to win games. I don't think he has to be extremely successful, but I just don't think they win games at all. I think they win less than five. So, he needs to win at least six. I say seven plus, and has to do pretty well. So, that's my choice. I'm gonna go Joe Judge.
I agree with that. There's actually been a couple that I was kind of jumping back and forth from between John Gruden out in Las Vegas as well as Matt Nagy over in Chicago. Both of them on the hot seat, but I think my pick here, just because of how bad the defense has looked, and if the offense can't get back to what they looked like previously, Mike McCarthy is going to be outside looking in. He has really struggled there in Dallas. Again, just not being able to find a defense. I mean, the offense is great. They've drafted very, very well. CeeDee Lamb is going to be a star in this league, but you can't give up 40 points a game and expect to be a good team in this league, especially. I understand Dak got hurt, but if you have a fully healthy Dak, uh, it's it just can't happen. So I suspect Mike McCarthy to be on the outside looking in at the end of the season.
That's tough, man. That's tough. I will say anything goes with Jerry Jones, but I can't blame him for that defense. That defense was terrible when he got the team, and the front office has done nothing to improve the defense really outside of Micah Parsons. I hope they're better because I do like it when the Cowboys are good. It just makes for better football, better storylines, and all the whole 9 yards. But that's a pretty good pick, man. But I hate to blame him for that, though. You know what I mean? So
It's true, but in Jerry Jones' world, only Jerry matters. So
true.
Fletch, absolutely phenomenal show. Thank you very much for all your picks and insights. If you want to watch us, continue to watch us, simply go to youtube.com and search for AKA Sports. Or if you're following us on podcasts, continue to go to anchor.fm slash AKA Sports or go to facebook.com slash AKA Sports FB. Again, we'll be putting out our pick six so you can play along all season long. Fletch, for you, for me, my name is Clark Heron, aka the Hairy Hobo, and we're out.
See you.